Okay, let's go ahead and begin. Many of you have been here before, so forgive me for repeating. Anyone who's here for the first time, thank you, welcome. If you haven't done so, please go to the website, become a member. It's free, but it helps us just to have you be part of our community. It takes you 30 seconds to become a member. There's no approval. There's no secret handshake or foreign languages. So that's easy. And be sure to sign up for the newsletter. This is how you know what we're doing, and we're doing quite a bit. We in 2023 we put on about 55 of these kind of programs. Last year we put on 115. So, and we're really trying to mix it up and make it be rich and worthwhile and valuable to you. So. Don't mind me chattering here. I'm letting people in the door as I'm doing this. So this is part of our Peacemaker Circle series. And I am personally, and we as an organization are dedicated to keeping these free and open to everybody. But notwithstanding that, if you can help us out, we sincerely appreciate it. You can donate at the website. So today we've got, I'm so happy, we had a few minutes to chat here before you all came in, Rabbi David Curel and Roshi Alem. And this is the second meeting of their delightful program offering on Bhem Zen, Martin Buber's Hasidic Tales as koans. And this is such a nice interfaith blending of hearts and minds and ideas and perspectives and so forth. And I know that's going to appeal to a lot of you because I know what you're interested in. So welcome everybody. Thank you, Rabbi David. Thank you, Roshi Ken. And I will mute myself and hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon or maybe even good evening, depending on where you are. Yes, this is the second time David and I have done this with a big group. We've done it a lot, just the two of us, kind of just allowing ourselves to respond to one of the tales of the Baal Shem. From the time I first stumbled on them, so many of them sounded like they could be Zen teachings. Zen is a storytelling tradition. And there's a strong Jewish storytelling tradition. I'm going to turn it over to David in a minute. He's going to tell you the magical way in which these stories are chosen for us. But the format basically is that David will read us a story, and he and I will do some reacting to it, and then we'll open it up for others of you to react. Jeff, are you going to do the calling on people and stuff? I think people are going to have to use their little Zoom hands.
Yeah, I think we have more than we can see on one page, so they will have to use the Zoom hand, which you'll find down under React. And yes, Ken, I'll try to help direct traffic.
Thank you. Jeff is a really young guy, so he can handle a lot of this technology stuff that's hard for old people like me.
Thank you. I'll remember that when I go see my cardiologist today.
David, you want to tell him how we picked the story?
Yeah, sure. I think I want to start just with a really quick backgrounder in case anyone here is truly new to us and to the Baal Shem. So the Baal Shem Tov um, was a spiritual master from the 18th century. That's 1700s, right? Um, and It's the founder of a spiritual revivalist movement called Hasidism. That you, if you know nothing else about Hasidic Jews, might have sort of a caricature of men in black hats, sort of walking around with their side locks, which is not untrue these days, but is a sort of born from a desire on one hand to oh, there's a note about the video being pinned. There's a note. There's desire on the one hand in the birth of Hasidism for a democratization of spirituality, and on the other for just an infusion of life into the life of the sort of the 18th century Jew. And these stories are collected by Martin Buber, they written before, but he sort of collected and retold them in some way. And typically, what the way Roshi, Ken, and I start our chavruta, our study sessions, is just by flipping the book open and seeing which story it lands in. Now, this book has been flipped open, and sort of stories have been read many times, and so there are natural creases in the book that make it less than random. And so what I have devised for today is just a simple random number generator that's going to pick, there are 20 stories in here. It's going to pick a number 1 through 20, and I'm going to click generate right now. Got number 10. So I'm going to count these to number 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So our story today is called The Forgotten Story. Before I start, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. Is that all right? Good. All right. The Forgotten Story. When the body of the Baal Shem was almost consumed by the fire of his soul, he called all his disciples to him. He had already stretched himself out on his last bed. His head was raised a little, resting on his left hand, and his face, during the whole time that he spoke, was turned fully toward his followers. His glance rested steadily on him to whom he spoke. He told each one of the group how he should lead his future life and in which spirit he should live it. Among his disciples was one who served him and was always near him. His name was Rabbi Simon. The Baal Shem called him last of all and said to him, "Friend, it will be your destiny to travel about in the world and to visit all the places where Jews dwell. There you will go into the houses and tell stories. You will speak of me and set forth with faithful words that what you have seen and experienced in all your days of living with me. And what men place in your hands as a reward for your living word, that will be your livelihood." Discontent arose in the heart of Rabbi Simon. To be sure, he loved more than anything else in the world to speak of the master and to reproduce the master's words with his own lips. But how might it benefit him to go about like a beggar, with no house, not even the smallest to call his own, an eternal wanderer, a guest at strange hearths? He was not able to bring himself to remain silent, but had to allow his drop of bitterness to flow into the death of his master. So he said in an undertone, "What will be the sense of that? I shall become wandering and vagabond, and the poorest pilgrim here below." Then the Baal Shem comforted him and said to him, "Your road will reach a good end, friend." When it happened soon afterwards that the master entered into the eternal, the disciples thought with love of fulfilling that which his will had destined for them. Rabbi Simon put on a traveling garment, walked away from there, and went from city to narrate to all Jews the stories of the holy Baal Shem. He won honor from this and found an easy living. And since he was still young and could allow his eyes to rove with an unburdened spirit, he took a liking to the beautiful roads which led over the multicolored earth, and he no longer felt any fear in coming and going. Thus, 2.5 years passed by. Then he met an old man who came from Jerusalem. This man gave him to understand that in Italy, in a city whose name he gave him, there resided a rich Jew who bore in his heart an astonishing love for the holy Baal Shem. His whole spirit was filled by him, and all his endeavors centered on hearing about the master. Then Rabbi Simon told himself that this Jew in Italy must be the right man to hear of the wonderful happenings of which he knew how to speak. For his words concerning the exalted man had, indeed, passed over many foolish spirits and by many frivolous ears, so that he now felt a desire to tell them to a genuine listener who would open his heart to him. He bought a horse and prepared himself for the journey. It was 7 months before he came to the city of the rich man, for he had to remain long enough at each place on the way, so that through his storytelling in the houses, he might earn the money for the expenses of his further travel. Immediately after his arrival in the city, he went into the house of a Jew and asked after this man who cherished so great a respect for the Baal Shem. Then the people told him that the Jew of whom he spoke had come to the city as a stranger about 10 years before. Already at that time, he had brought with him great wealth. Once, after he had spent a few months there, the last of a princely line had died. The dead man's palace and all his property surrounding it fell to a distant relative in Rome. This relative did not want to leave his hereditary home, so he expressed the wish to sell the inherited property. It was the foreign Jew who then came forward and paid in pure gold the tremendous purchase price. And all the Jews of the land were happy beyond all bounds that the foreign man should be housed among them so splendidly. For there was a pious and kind life spirit in and above him. For there was a pious and kind life spirit in and above him. On the Sabbath, his palace was open to every honorable Jew. In the broad halls stood the Sabbath tables in a radiance of linen and silver. Since the fall of the holy city, the day of the Lord had probably nowhere been celebrated so resplendently as here. At each of the 3 meals of the Sabbath, the host always had a story of the holy Baal Shem recited to him and his guests, and everyone was received in honor who had something to say of the man rich in grace. And his reward was also beyond all custom. On the day after the festival, the great Jew himself presented it to the narrator in well-coined gold. When Rabbi Simon learned this, he sent to the palace and had it announced there that a servant and disciple of the holy man had arrived in the city. The steward of the house came immediately, took him away, and with many marks of esteem, conducted him to the castle where a number of beautiful and comfortable rooms were assigned to him. Meanwhile, the news circulated among the Jewish people in the city itself, indeed, in the whole surrounding country, that a disciple of the Baal Shem had come. On the Sabbath, all those who were curious to hear hurried to the table of the hospitable man in a greater crowd than ever before. When the songs of the first Sabbath meal had solemnly and ardently resounded among the pillars of the hall, the master of the house raised his face and turned it toward Rabbi Simon, who read therein a request and an expectation. In a gentle voice, the great man invited him, if he deemed his house worthy, to speak of the great master for the comfort of their souls. Rabbi Simon sat upright in his chair, laid his arms on the carved arm seats, and opened his mouth to allow the image of the wonderful man to arise in respectful words. He was used to the reports of the life of the Baal Shem coming to his lips of themselves. But as he sat there now, expecting the speech to take shape in his mouth, an icy coldness suddenly came over him from within. The words froze on his lips. He stiffened and paled. As from behind a veil, he saw many eyes hanging on his mouth. He opened his lips, but the sound was stillborn. He was pained by the silent demand on all faces, which remained pitilessly turned toward him. He collected all his strength in order to set the image of the master before his soul. He thought of the city of Mezhbij, its houses and walls and gardens, and all the little things that were so familiar to him, and his thoughts did not change into an image. Confused and ashamed, he broke out in tears. Lifting his eyes, he saw that everybody regarded him as a deceiver, treacherously left in the lurch by the lying spirit. Only the master of the house looked at him, lost in thought, and full of kindly understanding, and said, "We shall wait until morning. Perhaps your memory will come back to you." Rabbi Simon lay the whole night in tears and waited for the image of the Baal Shem to visit him. But his mind remained deserted. When he appeared at the Sabbath morning meal, everyone looked past him, but the master of the house spoke to him again. "Perhaps you can tell us a story now?" Then Rabbi Simon spoke to him and swore that this night of forgetfulness into which his thoughts had sunk was no empty and accidental thing, but surely was decreed for him for some meaningful purpose by a power arising from a deep source. The rich man answered, "Let us wait until the third meal." Rabbi Simon perceived a humble smile on his countenance, but the pain and shame which visited him were much too great for him to reflect on this within himself. At the third meal, too, his memory did not return to him, but he fortified himself with love and accepted all with a faithful heart, for in his innermost being he now divined that all this had to take place in order that old chains might be loosened. The Sabbath passed, however, and nothing had changed. The day after, Rabbi Simon took his leave. The rich man let him go with eyes sunk in sorrow and presented him with a handsome gift that should compensate him for the long journey and his many wants. He also gave him a comfortable traveling carriage with servants in order that they might bring him to the border of the country, from where he would more easily be able to get along by himself. The guest descended and sat himself in the carriage. Everything was ready, and the coachman was just urging on the horses when Rabbi Simon felt as though a flash of light had traveled like lightning through his body. When he was able to collect his thoughts, he realized that a great story of the holy Baal Shem stood intimately before his soul with the clarity of a picture. He gave himself up for a while to the fervent delight that had overcome him at the moment of grace. Then he bid the coachman turn back the carriage, which had already gone several streets distant from the palace. When they reached the house, he sent a servant to the master and had him announce that Rabbi Simon had returned, for he had recalled a story of the Holy Master. The master received him, but the trembling expectation in his countenance escaped Rabbi Simon, who saw and felt nothing but his story. "I bid you sit before me," said the master, "and inform me of the occurrence which you have recalled at this hour." Rabbi Simon told him this story. It happened once, about the time of the first spring, just before the days in which the Christians celebrate their Easter, that the holy Baal Shem passed a whole Sabbath in gloom. He went about the house deeply absorbed and anxious, as if his soul had forsaken him for a dangerous battle, and he awaited its return. After the third meal, which he ate in silence, he ordered that the carriage be made ready and the horses hitched to it. His melancholy had lain over the house and his followers and over the house and his followers like a threatening dark thundercloud. With his command to prepare for the drive out, a sigh of relief swept through the room, for everyone knew that it was by traveling thus into the country that what had before been knotted always became straightened out. This time, there were 3 of his followers to whom he granted the privilege of taking part in the trip, and I was among them. We drove the whole night, and as often before, no one knew the goal of the journey. As the morning light climbed slowly upward, we entered a great city. The horses slackened their furious course, and, as if checked by an invisible hand, suddenly halted before the door of a dismal house whose side lay in a narrow street, while its gable end seemed turned toward a broad square. The gate was closed, the windows covered with shutters. The street lay deserted and silent. The master bid me descend and knock. I knocked for a long time, in vain. Finally, I put into my knocking all my longing for rest, and the somber, shut-in house reverberated with my blows. Then a small door, which was set in one of the giant side wings of the gate, was opened from within. Before us stood an old woman with a troubled face, out of which reddened eyes stared at us. Suddenly, she shouted at us, "What drives you to come here just today? What? Do you not know then that you are on the way to the slaughterhouse?" And since I looked at her uncomprehendingly, for it seemed to me that we had come upon a madwoman, she drew us into a doorway and said, "Now, I see that you are strangers and are not familiar with the customs of our city. This is how it is. There has been for several years a Christian bishop, a proud, unbending man who is the deadly enemy of the Jews. He has now commanded that all the Jews that are found on the streets on the day before the Easter holiday should be seized and martyred in revenge for their Messiah. Therefore, we are on our guard on these days and hide ourselves in the very interior of our houses. They know that well, so now they want to draw lots to determine on which of our people the torment shall fall. But you, she shrieked and pushed us toward the carriage. You, who are strangers here, they will not spare. You do not know the people of the city. They are ravening beasts when their blood is enkindled. Hurry, try to reach the next place and wait there until the end of this unhappy day before you come here to do your business. Thus shouted the old woman and raised her hands on high. But the Baal Shem paid no attention to her. He shoved her to one side, entered, and bid us open the gate and hide the carriage and houses in the stall and the supplies which we brought with us in the house. He stood and looked on tranquilly while everything took place according to his word. Then he bade us close the gate and door once more, and we stood in the great dark entrance hall. The master beckoned to us and led the way, climbing several steps on the staircase of carved wood. He opened the door, and we entered a stately room which was elevated a small height above the level of the earth. I stood for a while before my eyes took in the room, for although outside, meanwhile, the bright morning had ascended, the chamber lay in darkness. The window shutters were closed, and heavy curtains were drawn together over them. After looking around a little, I became aware of the fact that the room concealed many men. They had hidden themselves noiselessly in the corners as if through their anxiety they had lost consciousness. The whole household might well have been gathered there. Meanwhile, the old woman had followed us from the hall, weeping, and now reproached the Baal Shem on the ground that his entrance might bring down misfortune on her house. But he did not answer her. Instead, he measured the room with great strides and then halted by one of the windows that looked out into the open through a semicircular bay. He calmly stretched out his hand and shoved the curtains back. Then he opened the window and the wooden shutters behind it, and now stood with his whole figure against the open frame. The morning light and a fresh breeze streamed in. The old woman no longer dared to speak out loud, but she entreated the master with desperate gestures to close the window again and step back. Since, for all that, he paid no attention to her, she finally sank silently to the floor next to the others. The open window that now afforded us a free view did not look out onto the narrow street through which we had come, but rather on that great square to which the gable side of the house belonged. In the midst of it, I saw a church of white stone, which sent upward 2 towers. Just opposite our window, on the outer side of the walls, a pulpit was constructed. About 30 stone steps led up to its summit. Excuse me. About 30 stone steps led up to its summit. When the master had opened the window, only a few men stood in the square, but they increased in number from one minute to the other and now stood in a thick crowd around the pulpit. Now the voices of many bells boomed above us. Outside, among the men, a movement was perceptible, a shoving and pushing. Then there opened up in the dark crowd a broad, light street, and there appeared in splendid procession, with banners, lights, and clouds of incense, the bishop under his silver canopy. Everybody became still and waited while he descended the steps of the pulpit in his glittering brocaded gown. Then he sank into a silent prayer to prepare himself for his sermon, and the whole crowd kneeled noiselessly. The master stood steadfast in the open window and looked out. Then he spoke in a clear voice into just the silence. "Simon, go outside and say to the bishop, Israel, the son of Eliezer, is here and sends for you." That's the name of the Baal Shem Tov. When the people who were in the room with us heard these words, consternation overcame them, and they allowed themselves to forget the dread which had formerly driven them to hide in the corners. They sprang out, surrounded the Baal Shem, and protested against that which he had bid me to do. But he stood as if their words did not reach his ear and his understanding, looked at me meaningfully and said, "Go, Simon, go quickly, and do not be afraid." And I, who had hesitated for the length of a thought, now recognized my master as before, and went through the crowd to the pulpit, and no one spoke even a word or laid a finger on my garment. I strode up half of the stairs, then I halted and addressed the bishop in the Hebrew tongue. Israel, the son of Eliezer, is in that house. He sends for you that you should come to him. Then the bishop answered me in the same tongue, I know of his presence. Say to your master that I shall appear before him immediately after the sermon. I turned around, went through the crowd in the square, and entered the house. The people with whom we stayed had crept to the closed window to peer at the place and see what would become of me. They saw that I came through the crowd to the pulpit unharmed, held discourse with the bishop as I had been bid to do, and returned again safely. Then they understood that there must be something great about our master. And as I entered the room, I perceived how they surrounded my master and asked his pardon. He, however, listened imperturbably to my message, as if he and I were alone in the house. When he had heard me, he smiled a little and said to me, "Return. Go once more to the pulpit and say to the bishop, 'Do not be a fool. Come at once, for the man who summons you and invites you is Israel, the son of Eliezer.'" I did as he bid me and marched again to the pulpit. When I stepped onto the square, the bishop had just begun to preach. I climbed up and tugged a little at his mantle. Then he halted and looked at me, and I repeated the words of the Baal Shem. I noticed how his face changed color at my speech. Then he turned to the people and said, "Be patient for a little while. I shall return." He followed me over the square through the crowd in his gold and flower embroidered robe, the high gold cap on his head, and thus he entered the house and stepped before my master, the holy Baal Shem. They both went into a separate room, closed the door behind them, and remained there for 2 hours. Then the Baal Shem alone came out. He was greatly comforted. In his eyes shone the glory of God. He ordered us to prepare carriage and horses, and we drove away from there. I do not know what took place between the bishop and our master. Even the name of the city I do not know to this day, for the Baal Shem did not inform us of it at that time or later. I know only that it was a great thing that the holy man had effected when he came out of that closed room, for he looked like a cherub from the heavenly hosts. After his death, I failed to make inquiries concerning that event, for it had gone completely out of my mind soon after our return. And today, for the first time, just as I had left this house, I recalled it again. When Rabbi Simon ceased speaking, the rich man stood up, raised his hands to heaven, and praised God. "My friend," he said to Rabbi Simon, "blessed be thy coming, and blessed be each of thy words. I know that the truth came out of your mouth. I shall inform you of that part of the occurrence which must have remained dark to you. That bishop whom you summoned was I. I recognized you as soon as you entered my house. Once I was a Jew filled with the true wisdom and a hallowed soul, was mine. Then the alien spirit won power over me so that I fell from faith. Soon, I won the high regard of the adherents of my new creed. I took the holy orders of their church and climbed ever higher in office until I ruled as bishop over all the souls of this land. But my hatred against my own people was great. In the nights, to be sure, when my soul was defenseless, the shame of the apostate came over me. In the daytime, however, when I was fortified, I took revenge for the unrest of my nights and nourished all the malice in the souls of my community against the children of the people that I had disowned. My Jewish ancestors, however, had been an honorable race, proud of their faith. They had performed great service before the Lord, and many a one of them had sealed the holy covenant with his blood. The peace of their eternity was disturbed through my misdeeds. They sought out the Baal Shem and bade him have mercy on my fallen soul. Then the holy man entered my dreams and struggled in them with the evil spirit that possessed me. The two of them were mighty warriors, and I was torn hither and thither between them like a wretched leaf in a storm. But on the Sabbath of the Jews, which preceded the Christian Easter holiday, the spirit of the holy man was by my side day and night. He had already conquered my will. In the night, I determined to flee the next morning, to leave everything and return to the people of my childhood. But with the day, doubt arose in me. The bells called me, the waiting crowds surrounded the church, and the servants laid the golden garments on my shoulders. I was no longer able to renounce all this power over the human spirit, and I mounted the pulpit. Then the holy man sent you to summon me. But I wanted to speak my sermon first, for I thought to strengthen my will through my own words and through the inflamed hearts of those who surrounded me, in order that I might be able to persist in my defiance before your master. You called me a second time. Then all resistance deserted me, and I followed, as a child in the twilight obeys the call of its mother. I came to the master. He struggled over my soul and won it. He showed me the way whereby I could be redeemed from my guilt, and I became a penitent from that hour on. I confessed my error before the king and all the people. Then I left the country. I came here, passed my years in the purification of my soul, and awaited the divine absolution. For know that the Baal Shem had proclaimed to me, when once someone appears before you from a foreign land and tells you your story, that will be a sign of liberation from the fetters of your deeds. When you came now and all recollection of events was removed from your thoughts, I understood that this was for my sake, because I had not yet completed what I must do. Therefore, I plunged anew into the depths of devotion. But now that you have recalled my story, I know that I have been delivered. But you, my friend, will now have a fixed abode and will never again be a wanderer on this earth. For all that is mine, I will divide with you, from whose mouth the word of deliverance came to me. Let's sit with that for another minute. Well, Ken, I think we happen upon the longest story in the book.
For those who are new to this, the story within the story is not so unusual. but it just was long. Uh, and as I listened, different things arose. And, I was thinking about Simon wandering. Reminded me of being with Bernie on a street retreat. And what do you do on the street retreat? Bernie's answer was aimless meandering. And I was surprised in the beginning of the story that Simon wasn't frightened. Because although there were some wonderful moments of joy and beauty on the street, there was also anxiety wandering into the unknown, and what a lesson it was to learn to aimlessly meander. And that trap in there, right? Of wishing for reward. And the lesson, I guess, of the aimless meandering is kind of like the punchline of the story, in a lot of ways. That when you let go of purpose, and just let the universe lead you, then you discover rewards that you never could have imagined.
Yeah, I was struck by that too, and I feel like, I mean, we have not read the story together before that I recall. I remember reading it many, many years ago, but I'd forgotten how it ended, and there is the moment where he's drawing a blank and nothing is coming to him, and sort of parenthetically, what amazing fortitude and sort of strength of spirit to not just make something up, right, in this massive audience, and just but to really just be true to the spirit of the story, or the lack thereof, and just to anyway, that's but because the setup had been, he'd done this for a couple of years and he was actually doing fine. It seemed like his fears were unfounded. And then that he was now sort of pursuing this sort of white whale, sort of the way that I had built it up in my mind as I was reading it, in sort of this is where I'm going to get my big payoff. And the story easily could have ended with the carriage in the carriage, right, without sort of recalling the memory.
But then there's another layer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's almost like you do get like that little morality play, and then, but then like the story within the story is that it's not about him at all, right? It's not about his morality. Like he's, it's about this other, the former bishop.
And it's a story of his surrender too.
Say more.
Um, that he's just waiting.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing active that he can do to close this circle of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Just has to wait for the circle to close on its own. And this guy walks in, and Simon doesn't remember him, but he remembers Simon. That's, I knew as soon as you walked in who you were.
Yeah. Jeff, can you remind me, is our time an hour or an hour and a half? I had it two ways in my calendar.
Hour and a half, David, if
Okay.
you guys want it. Yep.
Okay. Great. I didn't want to give short shrift to what other responses might be alive.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. I don't look at the chat while I'm talking to people, or listening to people, because I'm absolutely no good at multitasking. So I would appreciate it if instead of chatting, you raised your hands and shared. With your camera on, I would love to see your face when you share.
And you can use your electronic hand under React, or in fact, I can see all of you. So if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, that's all right as well. We'll spot you if your camera's on. Mary Lynn, you've got your hand up, it looks like.
Oh my God. Ken and Rabbi David, you are sent from heaven today. Okay, so I was a teacher and I taught English as a second language. And I taught refugees that were Bosnians and Sudanese and whatever. And there were also a lot of gays, a lot of homosexuals, a lot of abused people, marginalized people in my class. So the first class, I prepared this lovely little script as a teacher, and I was going to outline them and walk them through this very precise program. I got up in front of the class, and the first thing I did, a great big hand came down and silenced my brain. The second thing I did was burst into tears. I had nothing to say. So the first thing that came out of my mouth was, you people are the gift. And so I've a couple more words, and then I had 95% attendance in that class, even in Iowa blizzards. So you're singing my song today. You're singing my song, and I'm loving the foreign messengers coming to me. You're not exactly foreign, but I love the fact that I'm interested in where you're going to go with the Koans. with this. So you're going to do Zen koans then from this, or what? I'm interested.
I think
Thanks,
this
Mary
was.
Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you both for being yourselves. I don't know you guys, but I love you.
Thank you, Mary Lynn.
Well, that breaks the ice a little bit. It's a nice way to start by saying that they're sent from heaven. Although I need to put in that, in fact, Ken is in Staten Island, so we
Close to heaven.
close to heaven. Melissa, I see your hand. Please open your mic and share.
Hi, my name is not Melissa. Melissa's my wife, actually, but it's Matthew. But yeah, so I don't know, it's just like a lot in this resonated with me like hugely. Like I just had a mental health crisis in August, and what Ken just said too, and like kind of just summed it all up, is letting go of purpose. And then and it was just I don't know, I just find it very also an amazing time to discuss a bishop, a Catholic bishop, when we just elected, there was a new pope elected. And it's just the timing of this is very amazing. And but it just goes like, what really, I guess, resonated with me was the fact that like this man who completely turned against himself to climb something completely climb I guess a hierarchy of something that was completely different, and have so much hate for his own people within him, and then do another 180 back. And just to see, like, I don't know, it just spoke with me too, like within my life, and just all the different ebbs and flows you go through, especially as like a young person, and then coming to a part where you coming to that place where you could just surrender and let go of purpose. And like working in counseling, actually, with a counselor who happened to be Jewish, and would take from actually a lot of Martin Buber stuff. And he would always say that, he's like, no more shoulding. No more shoulding. Let go of the should, and get, just let go of it all, and basically let the universe take you where you need to go. And it's like, that's, I don't know, just was such a kind of a culmination of that, and it was really nice. So thank you.
Anyone else? Ken, I'm going to need to step away for a minute to get the door here, so you can call on people.
Ken, I'll ask you, since Mary Lynn sort of broached it. And I know I'm walking into it here asking Roshi this question, but what is a Zen koan?
It's a story from the Hasidim. They tend to be shorter stories. And many, some of the Hasidic tales are pretty short. This was rich, layered. Their koans are I guess, have been chosen or preserved in a way, kept being used. Because if you ask, what does it mean, or what's the point? you get lost. What you can do with a koan really is what you can do with a tale of the Baal Shem is share what it brings up with you, brings up in you. It doesn't have to be some old Chinese guy in a koan or an old Jewish guy. Mary Lynn reminded me of a story that I haven't thought of in a long time. She reminded me of my first time teaching. I taught for a few years in college, and it was a big anxiety for me. And I spent the summer before my first gig writing my lectures. Very, very as erudite as I could make them.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up in front of my first class to read my first lecture. And I got through the first sentence. And the rest of the class was students reacting to that first sentence and my reacting to their reactions and people reacting to each other. And I didn't get through the lecture. The first lecture, I didn't get through the first lecture the whole semester. And maybe the other thing about koans is there are koan that's important. You never finish with it. You come back to it again and again. And this story that you read today has that quality. This is not, okay, we heard that story, we're done with it. Yeah. It is one of the questions that came up for me, and Matthew just answered it, I think, it's like, you call this random, but this isn't really, it's like random is just the way the universe is working here. So it's a good question to ask, why did this story come up today? It's a question that I want to ask all the time for myself and with students working on koans. Why does this koan come up at this moment in your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But why does this koan come up in this moment? Following Francis passing and the election of the new pope. And Francis touched a lot of people who touched me. I'm not Catholic. I've been telling people he was the only pope who ever tempted me to become Catholic. Because of his kind of spontaneous humanity, How do you surrender?
Mm.
And Glenn Duvall has his hand up there. If you want to take a comment or a question, Glenn.
Thank you, Jeff. I loved the story. It brought home a lot of associations in various ways. I was thinking of the Baal Shem's friend Simon, not unlike Ananda. And it just went on and on. I thought through all of them. the one thing I wrote down, which was very important to me, was when the Baal Shem says, "You, Rabbi, you read out, your road shall reach a good end," as a part of the story, and so if bear with me, just a little bit about who I am. My Buddhist name is Kogan. Etsudo is the second name. I was named my bar mitzvah. At the time, I was named after my maternal grandmother, Rivka. But in any case, not unlike the bishop, I went away from Judaism at some point, a long time ago. And so certainly not as skillful or as accomplished as the bishop was, but I did go away and I found Judaism. So this whole story for me is a retelling of finding my own spiritual roots. And so that's really warms me. So recently I told a good friend that I had was taking some courses from the Institute of Jewish Spirituality. And both courses are based on the teachings of two Hasidic rabbis. Because my memory is really for goodness is no good. I probably at this point can't tell you the rabbis' names. But be that as it may, the one koan, the other thing that came home to me was the story of the old woman selling rice cakes, and the complete knowledgeable teacher of I guess it was, I want to say the Diamond Sutra, but I'm not sure if that's correct either, said, with what mind will you be pacified? And he couldn't answer. And he threw away all his books. And so this idea of mindless meandering comes home to me because my name that was given to me, Untamed Source, is a kind of mindless it's not really mindless meandering. And the second part of it is joyful practice, is the fact that each person that I meet in life is the end of the road. And I can choose, like we all can choose, how we meet that person. And it seems to me that the message there that the Baal Shem Tov knew is that Simon would in his travels meet people in nature again and again that lifted him up to the next level. And finally, by telling that story to his benefactor in Italy, he was completely lifted up. So that's a lot, but that's what came through to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Glenn. My friend Rachel. Hi, Rachel. It's you.
Hey, Jeff.
How are you?
So I want to ask a question, and then I just want to say several things. I'm going to ramble a little bit like Glenn did, so thank you, Glenn. Anyway, I feel like I missed something when I feel like the bishop said to Simon, I recognized you, but you didn't recognize me. Is that right? In the story, is that right? How would the bishop have recognized Simon? I think I missed that. How would he have recognized Simon?
Just by his face.
I know, but where had he seen him before? That's
Simon
what
was the kid. Simon was, in my mind, the kid who the Baal Shem sent across the square
Yeah, yeah.
for the bishop.
right, but he was the person he sent across the square to get the bishop, but I did, anyway. I thought the bishop was saying, I knew who you were, but you didn't know who I was, or something like that.
He's saying that after the fact. Right? He's
Okay.
saying that sort of in the sort of not inside of the story, but sort of like stepping out of the story.
Okay. Well, I feel many things about the story. The thing that is so profound to me is that the Baal Shem Tov felt this deep disturbance about something, and that he had to act on it. And that, from such a distance, I guess, both spiritually and literally, he knew this man was in serious trouble, this bishop. And so the fact that, he's an unusual person, let me say that, the Baal Shem Tov, but still, this idea that this human being could feel so deeply on the instinctual level that someone is in trouble, and that it's his work to go get that someone and offer them something, redemption. And he does that really fearlessly. So that's quite something. The other thing I think is with Simon, the trust that he had in the Baal Shem Tov, and I think that for me personally, when I don't have enough trust, I do act on instinct a lot, and it's always a little scary when I do. But the fact that you have a sense that you trust someone else enough that you can lean on that makes any sense, is just profound. And I feel like there are times in all of our lives when we have to, it's like leaning on the ancestors, that we have to trust in something. And I feel like that's what Simon's story is all about throughout the whole thing. The other thing I have to say was just really bracing to me. I was not raised Jewish, but I had 20 or 30 years in close connection to the tradition. I was a student of Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, may his memory be for blessing. So I have this sort of deep connection to Judaism that goes beyond my own understanding. And just even hearing this story about the Catholics murdering the Jews the day before Easter, it just, it's just so chilling. And it's, so if I think about, there's so much embedded in this story. There's the story of this great horror and people living in deep fear, just shaking. And then you have the Baal Shem Tov, and he comes into that deep fear with his own level of conviction, which is incredible. And Simon can lean on that, and this whole thing happens. The last thing I want to say is, I guess the religiosity of the language of the bishop being apostate and this and that and the other is like, well, we leave our religions and we come back to them. Many of us have done that. The thing that's pretty horrible about the bishop is that he turned on the people and wanted to kill them. So the level of forgiveness and care and offering of, I'll say, redemption that the Baal Shem Tov shows this man is just phenomenal. Actually, it's amazing. So there's a lot to contemplate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Great. Good to hear from you, Rachel. Thank you. Steve Gelb, you've got your hand up patiently. Thank you. Do you want to open your mic?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to lower my hand. Yeah. What came up for me is how often we're reminded that things are not what they seem to be. how our interpretation of a situation, our assumptions, our expectations are exposed as fantasies or delusions. And I think that's the part of the story where all the people are hiding. And then, oh my God, he's sending out this Jew to the bishop before a pogrom is about to begin. And, what could be crazier than that? And then at the end, it's all unknotted and unraveled. And we see we were completely deluded about reality. So that's an important lesson, I think, that we try to let go of the delusions and be present to what's going on.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? We've got Gary, I see your actual shadow hand waving over there if you want to unmute.
I'm unmuting. So yeah, thank you. I'm a newbie on the block, but I'm gonna jump right in. It wasn't the story so much as what Ken said at some point about it being a morality play and Simon's surrender. And he also said he realized or he understood that there was nothing active he could do. And in the context of what's going on in the world right now, and I know a lot of people are asking questions about what can I do and feeling as if whether they are being active enough. I think it's very relevant. And personally, I ask myself that question, and the letting go part sometimes feels a little, I question whether or not that's passive or maybe playing it safe and not wanting to put myself out there in some way. And it's difficult socially sometimes as well with people who are maybe not liking that particular maybe of not doing something and of being not active in a way that they feel I should be being active. Anything Ken might want to say or anyone else who might relate to that would be great to hear.
Thanks, Gary.
I mean, the first thing that comes up for me, Gary, as you were speaking, were the Zen Peacemaker 3 tenets, right? It's, and they've all been spoken of here. So there's the not knowing, sort of letting go of the story that Steve was talking about, bearing witness to what's actually happening. And then the piece that I think you're pointing to is the loving action that arises when you are able to really be in the not knowing and to bear witness. And I think that's the difference between somebody who is releasing into, as you're saying, sort of the confounding situation, and someone who is burying their head in the sand or sort of bypassing it in some way. That there's some response, and and I think some direct students of Bernie might be able to speak more sort of eloquently about this, but the direct response of the bearing witness is that loving action, right? Is that piece that will bubble forward from you in your or in our in any of our, and it might not be sort of like standing on the street with a protest sign, right? It could take a lot of different modes.
Well, I think I want to add something, but I don't know exactly. I want to begin adding. I think it was Rachel who talked about the horror of the bishop as the story begins. And this is maybe this is a Peacemaker plug, Jeff. For for the Auschwitz retreat. The we do need to connect to the horror. Thank you. It was you, Rachel, who underlined that for us. And it's part of all of us. The horror is not just something that belongs to other. The horror belongs to all of us. And it was a startling moment for me sitting on the tracks at Birkenau to realize that if I had chosen my parents differently, I could have ended up as a guard in the tower rather than an inmate going to the gas chamber. And I guess my Bernie, would encourage me not to rush to the loving action. When we rush to the loving action, we're always taking care of other. We always have this separation. Sometimes it takes a longer story. This was a journey. And if you did it in a 3-line koan, you wouldn't quite get the journey the way you're doing this story.
Ken, this is Rachel, I want to add to that. I just want to say thank you for that a lot. And I don't know what the synchronicity of this is, but about a half an hour ago, the sky's just open. It was pouring down rain here. And I realized I'd left my car windows open, so I had to go out in the pouring down rain. Talking, roll the windows up. I feel like there's something there, just the pouring down. And I just couldn't agree with you more. It really is a shared horror. And I think that's why communities and sanghas are so important. And that when we are bearing witness, if we're doing it together, that's even part of the action, so to speak. And not to hurry to the action, I think is really important, because then often not only are we taking care of the other, but we're taking care of ourselves. It's like we can't just sit with it, we have to do something. Anyway, I really appreciate this whole experience. Thank you.
Hi. Can I speak?
Go ahead.
Oh, there you are. Is
Yeah.
it Heike?
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
One thing that struck me in the story was the willingness that Simon had, that the bishop had. Simon was willing to go on this journey because the Baal Shem Tov recommended it. The bishop was willing to come off his pulpit and go to where, one of the things I asked myself, why didn't the Baal Shem Tov just go to the pulpit where the bishop was? But no, I think it was about that the bishop had to be willing to come off the pulpit and actually go to where the Baal Shem Tov was. And I think this whole idea of willingness is so important in terms of practice. So thank you.
And David Levy, did I see your hand up? Are you still here?
Reluctantly, yes.
Well, don't be on the spot. If you don't want to share, it's okay.
It's not my spot. It's life is spotting all over the place. Just before coming to this session, I was listening to the Woodstock Jewish congregation presentation between Rabbi Kliegler and Peter Beinhardt. The discussion partially about Peter's book that I think it's new to me. The title is something like Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza. How does one do this? And then I came here with this story. And I think because of, in a sense, my recent activity with the Zen Peacemaker Order and the training, these three tenets are really very present for me. And earlier people talking about the willingness and the surrender. And it seems like, I mean, listening to the Rabbi Kliegler and Peter, the complications of all these sort of beliefs and ideas that people have about Zionism, anti-Zionism, different forms of Zionism, different forms of anti-Semitism, the support of the state of Israel because we really want the Jews there, but not here. I mean, it's incredibly layered and complicated with all sorts of people's variations. And hearing this story just tears at me this idea, this naive idea that not knowing and this idea of letting go is really being willing to let go of all these stories, all these beliefs, all these things that we're holding on to make our stand in this world, and bearing witness to the horror and that's continuing, and the horror that I can bring into another person's life if I'm not thoughtful and careful, and this idea, what was just said about bearing witness in itself as a group. And it struck me in hearing about the retreat at Auschwitz or reading in Bernie's Bearing Witness book, the simple act of sitting together as a group and reciting people's names. Real people, children, women, men who have died. Somehow, for me, brings me closer and closer to my own heart that's unsheathed, that is not buried or defended by all these beliefs and all these different ideas. And it's just this raw heart, and how to meet each of you, how to meet myself, how to meet the world with a raw heart and say, this is where I stand and this is what I offer, is part of the whole complicated story. But I think within the story that was just read, there is that element of the heart. The heart can recognize, even if we create all sorts of things that get in the way, or but to listen to one's heart and really abide there is it takes the monumental faith that this person had in the Baal Shem Tov, he had in himself the willingness to surrender to, okay, I'll take on this task, and the bishops. I mean, all these layers of pulling away and then surrendering and coming up with all sorts of, and then clearing all of that away, and be willing to be that raw in the heart. For me, that's one of the elements of this story.
Thank you, David. Ken, Rabbi David, any comment? It's hard to add to that.
Amen. That's all I have to say. Amen.
That's enough. Friends, we have just a couple more minutes. If there's one last quick question, or Ken and David, if you guys want to just wrap up with something final you'd like to share, we've just got about 2.5 minutes here.
Wrap up is not possible.
Yeah. And it's not necessary. So
I want to appreciate all of the deepening and comments that everyone's made, because this really has, I come to each one of these stories, even if I've read them before, with the desire at least to be in not knowing. And I was reading, especially I think because of the length, I just couldn't even fully keep the whole story in mind. So really, everyone's comments has deepened this story for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and conclude then. Maybe just in this last little bit of stillness.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi David. Thank you, Roshi Ken. Really rich, wonderful. And thank you all for participating.